1994, first job out of college, I worked as a commodities broker. I was a futures broker in Vienna, Austria. Great experience. I never want to repeat it. I have no interest in going back. There's a reason I made a heck of a lot more money as a broker than I did going to graduate school. I guarantee you that. But it was a great learning experience. There were a couple guys on my desk named Billy and Dave. They were my mentors in the markets. And about the, I don't know, probably about the second week I worked there, they took me out at lunch, took me out for beers. It was Europe, it was the 90s, it was perfectly acceptable to have beers and go back to work. They take me out for beers to the pub. And they kind of sit me down and, share their wisdom. And these are guys who, I mean, they were these grizzly veterans. You're sitting there talking to them, like in their 60s, been doing this for their whole lives. I mean, this was the only job they'd ever had. Now, actually, during the course of this particular lunch, I found out they were actually in their early 40s. It was the only job they'd ever had, but they'd aged 40 years in 20, which may have something to do with the number of beers they consumed at lunch every day, but that's neither here nor there. But this one particular day, they shared something that was really important for everybody who's in these markets to understand. There's a circle of life in the financial markets. There's a food chain in the financial markets. And you have to understand this because you guys are in the financial markets every day. At the top of the food chain is a shark. Okay? That's Goldman Sachs. Every day they have 100 traders or 200 traders or 1,000 traders wake up whose sole job it is to make money in these markets. They have budgets in the 6, if not 7 figures for research, for information, for data, for flying around and talking to farmers around the world, not just around the Midwest, but to Brazil, to Argentina, to China, to Australia. How bad is that flooding? They've got a guy there looking at it, I'm sure. Okay? They are the sharks. They are at the top of the food chain in the markets. You, my friends, you are plankton. Okay? You are what exists to get eaten by the rest of the food chain. Okay? Now, I don't mean this to insult you. I don't mean this to pick on you. I'm plankton right along with you. Okay? I'm plankton right along with you. But you got to understand, every day, when you look at this entire market, the number of people who have incredible information about this market compared to us, we don't and we won't. And the reason that information matters is without that superior information, you're not going to beat the market. There are a few people who have some who can do it without these giant firms' knowledge. There are some people who just have a talent and an ability. The fact that you're sitting in here with me, no offense, means you probably don't have it. You probably don't have it. And that's not a bad thing. Okay? Because here's the thing. If you can make money in the markets, okay, trading commodities, you don't need to have like land and tractors and silos and any of that. If you can actually beat the market, you can have your own island in the Caribbean. Okay? And there's no reason. Okay, if you can beat the market, then just your farming should just be a hobby. You do it because you like it. You do it because you like repairing your combine while you're watching the hailstorm roll in. You do it because this is fun to you. And that's great. If that's the case, that's great. Okay, but the reality is beating the market. So many people focus on that. So many people focus on their marketing and trying to time the market. You can't, guys. I can show you a stack of papers this high. People just can't do it. Now, those rare people who seem to have some sort of knack, it's 1/100% of everybody who does it. Okay? Now, please understand this doesn't mean that speculation is wrong or is bad. I'm not picking on speculators, any of that. What I want to say is if you can beat the market, you don't need to be a farmer. Okay? If you can beat the market, you don't need to be a farmer. If you want to be a farmer, if you are a farmer though, you need to understand that probably trying to beat the market is not the best use of your time. So many farmers spend so much time, so much money, so many newsletters. They pay a ton of money for it, to try and beat the market, try and time the market. Hey, have you ever wondered this? If that guy who's selling you this newsletter for $150 a month, if he knows where this market is going, A, why is he telling it to you for $150 a month? And B, why does he live in Minnesota? I mean, really. If you have basically the Midas touch, no offense to people from Minnesota, but why are you living in Minnesota? Okay? Something to think about. Okay? Instead, things to think about from the concept of the futures markets. A couple changes. First, you're not going to predict the market, so don't try. Talk a little more about that in a second, in the next section. But one of the changes in this new market that we have to think about is grain marketing decisions made more than 3 months before planting. You have to take into account input price variability. Okay, for many years, first 6 years I was at Ohio State, January every year you could book new crop above 250 on the board. You could book new crop 250 above on the board. You go out another year, new crop 1 year out, you could do 260, sometimes 270. Why not? I mean, you weren't sure exactly how many bushels you were going to have, so you couldn't market everything. But let's face it, 7 years ago, you knew what land prices were going to be a year out. You knew what your rents were going to be. You had a good idea what fertilizer was going to be. You had a good idea what your chemical, your seed, all that. There's so much less variability in input costs. Now, when we start talking about marketing a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out, it's not only how much rent are you going to be paying on your land, how much land are you going to have? I mean, if you're renting, if most of your ground is rented, I mean, that's a vicious market. It's not just that, the rents are changing a lot. There's a viciousness in the buying, selling, changing, who actually has that land, right? I mean, this is crazy. This is unimaginable just a few years ago. So the question is, if you're going to market that far out, because we see some great opportunities. We see some great opportunities. The question is, what are your costs going to be? Sure, you can lock in $6 corn, and you've got to sit and think, that's probably going to be profitable. But we don't know it. Not like we historically did. So the key point is you've got to manage margins, not prices. Okay, we've got to learn to manage margins, not prices. If you're going to lock in more than just a little bit of your production a couple years out, you better think about how sure are you of your input costs. Okay, how sure are you of your input costs? And you've got to work on managing those margins. And I know a lot of you are thinking, that's not easy. 2 years out, I can't buy fertilizer. I know that. And that means you need to be really careful about locking in your output costs. Okay? Very careful. Especially for young farmers. This is something I harp on in my grain marketing classes. It's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Young farmers, people starting out, people with weak balance sheets, any farmer who's got a weak balance sheet, you need to be taking less risk, not more. Okay, you need to manage margins, look for profitable opportunities to market, and aggressively take those. A lot of people think of just, I'm starting out, or I've had a bad couple of years, my balance sheet doesn't look great, I need to make money. And so they want to take more risk to make more money. The problem is, when you take more risk, it increases the chance that things go wrong. When you've got a weak balance sheet, that increases the chance you go out of business. What you've got to do, weak balance sheet means you take less risk. It means you look, where can I be profitable? Is that price profitable? Yeah, I'm going to take it. Do I know what my input costs are going to be? Yeah, okay, good. Take it. You're never going to go broke making a profit. And this is a key point. Okay? You got to think marketing for margins, not marketing for price.